Please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Hello, everyone. I can tell it's the afternoon. It's almost happy hour. I think the bar is open. The crowd in the afternoon is a little rowdier than the morning. But we have a few more great conversations to be had, so please take your seats. My name is Amy Harder. I just joined Axios a couple of weeks ago. I should say rejoined, because I was one of the first OG back in the day when it launched, and I am thrilled to be back. I'm the national energy correspondent, leading a lot of these conversations on these important topics. Quick plug, speaking of our team, we have just relaunched what was formerly the Generate newsletter into the Future of Energy newsletter. Now, every Monday through Friday, you'll see a brand new Future of Energy newsletter in your inbox. And if you haven't signed up, please do so by going to our website and navigating to the newsletter signups. And that's a huge thank you to my colleagues, Ben Gieman, Chuck Machukin, and others who have helped make this possible. And of course, a big thank you to our Axios events team to make this space such a great gathering place. The Future of Energy newsletter will have much the same premise as Generate, except an even more laser focus on the people, technologies, and policies of the future. And one final note, if you're following along on social media, X, LinkedIn, other places, please use the hashtag AxiosHouse. So without further ado, I'm excited to get started on our next set of conversations surrounding sustainability and business impact. So please welcome to the stage our first guest, Delta Airlines Chief Sustainability Officer, Amelia DeLuca. Thank you, Amelia, so much for being with us here today. My first question actually goes to you out in the audience. Raise your hand if you've been on a flight in the last 48 hours.
Okay, bonus points if it's a Delta flight.
Raise your hand. Nope, we're not going to do that one just yet. But I asked that question because it helps underscore, as we Axions say, why it matters. There has been now and again a debate about, oh, should we stop flying? But I think it's pretty clear that we are going to fly as a species, and so how do we do it in a cleaner manner? And I should say that we here today are kind of a unique subset of society in that actually most Americans don't fly as much as, or most people don't fly as much as we do, but we're part of, not part of the problem, but we're part of the reason why we need to pay attention to this issue. So, Amelia, I want to start with building on something that you and I talked about a little bit ago to prepare for this conversation, is that you recently attended a gathering with other chief sustainability officers. And, you know, the conventional wisdom might be that wasn't exactly a happy time. The Trump administration has not been positive on environmental issues, to say the least. But you actually told me, quote, it was the best summit yet. Yes. How is that possible?
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive. And I will just step back real quick and just kind of say, this is a hard year, but I recognize I'm coming from a place of privilege to talk about the fact that I represent the aviation industry, which really, no matter which side of the aisle you're on or what job you have, you want us to succeed. You want us to exist. You want us to get the basics right, be on time, get your bag there, and hey, with Delta, fast free Wi-Fi. But you also want us to decarbonize. Yeah, I have to get the plug in every time or else they won't let me go anywhere. And so it really has been our best year at Delta, and we've done some really cool stuff, and the numbers back that up. And so I was hesitant to go to a CSO summit in the summer because I thought, oh my God, I'm either going to be the only one in the room that's not bemoaning my job, or I'm going to sound obnoxious. And the room was so full of hope because as practitioners of sustainability, our job is to figure out how to put together puzzle pieces that don't make sense and how they're going to go together. And so this year just meant the puzzle was that much more challenging. But the pieces still go together. We know we're moving towards the future. We all must believe, that's why we're all here, we're optimists by nature, that there is a puzzle on the other side that is a cleaner, more accessible Earth for everyone. And for us, it's air travel for everyone. And so the room was filled with, okay, how'd you get that? So I showed up and I was like, hey, I got a centralized budget approved for the first time ever, despite some of the financial hardships. How'd you do that? Someone else, another practitioner, had a very similar thing. And so we were all sharing business cases. And the whole point is sustainability is good for business. And this year more than ever, we just have to set out to prove that every day. We cannot trust that everyone believes what we do or that they have some sort of altruistic connection to the work. We have to prove that we are saving money or we're growing revenue in every business case that we bring forward.
But there has to be some sort of challenging impact from the Trump administration and the policies on specifically efforts to decarbonize the airline and the air industry. So can you talk about how, I guess, number one, do you agree with that? And how have you been responding to sort of the pullback on clean energy initiatives?
Well, again, I'm maybe not your best guest for some of these questions or for this year. There was one clean energy credit that went forward from the Biden administration, the Trump administration. It was the clean energy credit around sustainable aviation fuel. This product, which goes into our airplanes, uses 80% less emissions, but also props up farmers and rural communities, right? So win-win all around. That was great. I think the second thing is our consumer base, right? We're a consumer brand, right? We actually don't get caught in politics because of that. We are behooven to our consumers above all else. And so when 75% of my premium, most loyal, as well as Gen Z, each of those three sectors says to me, not only is sustainability important to me, but as a premium brand, I expect you to be sustainable. I will not necessarily participate. I will not necessarily pay more. But just like anything else that I buy today, if I'm going to buy a luxury handbag or shoes or you name it, even your sneakers that you buy for running now, it says what the carbon emissions footprint is. So we are becoming conditions to expect our premium products to be sustainable, and it's no different with Delta. And so really, we've just kind of switched our thinking a little bit. Politics are important, and we need to understand the priorities of every administration, but we are a consumer brand above all else. And the nice thing about that is that's a North Star that's never going to change.
And so sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, that credit has remained, right? It's being phased out, but it was one of the ones that stayed on.
It's stuck, yeah. It was a great victory for us.
And how do you think that happened? Was that a success on companies like yours, or were there other factors at play?
I think it's a value chain approach. So anyone in here, right, you all raised your hands, you flew here. Perhaps you're associated with a company. That company does business by air travel. So you got the corporate sector that believes in it. And then again, you have a lot of rural communities in America, both farmers as well as people that were participating in, you name it, ethanol production. All of those industries are a little bit in question right now. And so enter sustainable aviation fuel. And the punchline of this is you're not going to see an airplane flown with batteries probably in our generation, frankly. Maybe my grandkids will figure it out, but as of now, batteries are just too heavy to put on a plane and get that thing to go in the air. So you've got this liquid drop-in fuel that can come from, in probably 10 years, could come from corn, could come from wood waste, could come from, today it's coming from soy, novel cover crops, you name it. And the whole point is you've got a whole rural community that's like, I actually don't know where my future is. My present is tough and my future looks even tougher. Sustainable aviation fuel is not just a blip. It's not a 5-year thing. This is a multiple decades worth of a product that we're going to need as an industry that also helps those communities. And that's, again, where you have that win-win-win, really.
And so I understand that a few years ago, you actually shelved relying on carbon credits in terms of your climate solution and instead shifted to focus on technological solutions like SAF. Can you talk about what Delta specifically is doing on SAF and the outlook for it for the next few years?
Yeah, it's my favorite topic. Super geeky about it, but it's very, very cool. I'm from the Midwest. My family had a soybean farm until a couple of years ago, which again, so I know firsthand how tough the farming industry is. And so I was incredibly proud last year that we took the first batch of what's called a camelina sustainable aviation fuel. Camelina is a crop in the Midwest that you can grow in the winter seasons when the soil is barren. And so it's great for creating a new crop that we can crush into jet fuel, but it's also great for a whole host of other environmental reasons. So last year we actually flew our first flight flown by Minnesota-grown camelina. So that makes me super proud about showing the art of the possible. I think the other thing, though, of course, is it's that value chain approach. So for me, it's holding hands with our corporate customers. So we don't always talk about this as Delta, but anywhere from 20 to 25% of our revenue comes from our corporate customers. They're very near and dear to our hearts. If you've traveled with us on a corporate customer, you're going to see we go the extra mile for you because we want to be your preferred airline of choice. We also know that those corporate customers, their businesses are feeling that push of if I travel, it makes my own company's climate target that much harder. And so sustainable aviation fuel, we have a demand consortium now. We have over 50 corporate and cargo customers who have signed up beside us to say, we will also purchase this product. And those long-term signals then send it out into the market to say, again, if you build it, they will come. And so every year we're seeing just exponential growth and uplift of the product, though still very small. The amount of supply is still less than 1 week of air travel for the entire global aviation industry, the entire global supply. And so we got a long ways to go.
So sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, for the wonks among us, is it's an interesting term, right? Because it doesn't mean just one type of fuel. I mean, you listed several. So it's a bizarre thing to get our heads around, but it could be everything from biofuels, which is what you've been talking about. Also cooking oil, like literally the oil from McDonald's can go into it. But what about the next generation of that, potentially e-fuels? I know there's been some consideration of that. Is that anywhere close to that? And across the board on SAF, what is the cost outlook for that? Is it competitive?
Yeah, so things that we're talking about today are things we can all understand today. The future is a little bit less clear. So there's obviously, and you've heard it this week, right? There's an e-fuel in the future, which would use a captured carbon, mix it with green hydrogen. You'd have a zero emissions fuel that is fully renewable, which is incredible, and in theory has a cost structure that is cheaper than today's jet fuel. So when we talk about that ability for more people to access air travel, we want to keep a keen eye on making sure that our cost structure doesn't go up. So this is a big unlock for us. The second thing, though, beyond SAF that I get really excited about is when we think about the technologies of the future, right? My goal in life is to take you further, or at least the same distance, but using less jet fuel. And so there's a lot of technologies today that enable that, and there's a lot of talk about the aircraft of the future that enables that. Again, becomes much more accessible, a much lower cost structure, and for us, it burns less jet fuel. So again, you've got some really novel technologies out there.
How much more expensive is SAF compared to traditional jet fuel?
Well, SAF today is about 2 to 3 times more expensive. That's where policy is important to us. Having that corporate buyer on the other side is important to us. And then we work with companies. You know, we've been very public about Shell does a lot of the infrastructure and logistics for us because you can save money if you can figure out how to not only scale the creation of the product, but obviously get it to where you need it to be as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. So all those parts are helping with a little bit of a downward slope, but we know the real long-term unlock is probably with the e-fuels in the future, and that's probably 20-ish years away. But our whole job, again, is this and concept. It's not an or. It's not if we don't have perfection, we're not going to do anything. It's just and, right? Every year we've got used cooking oil SAF, and now you're learning a new term today, which is camelina. I'm hopeful that you'll see in the next couple of years woody biomass. That's really important to us in Georgia because we've had just an immense amount of challenges with a hurricane a year ago that's just downed all those forest land owners' trees. And so if you can take all those byproducts and turn them into fuel, again, win-win.
So what more could governments, whether this government or others around the world, or state governments even, what more could they do to help bring down that cost? Because as long as it's more expensive, it won't scale up.
Well, I think there's a path. Every model suggests that you can get the cost curve to come down. I think you just need the certainty of the policy, which again, we're very fortunate to have at the federal level, and many states are supporting it as well. So the longer you have that policy and the more states or federal governments that are supporting it, the better off you're going to be. And so in the United States, just super interesting, if you look at the map of states that have sustainable aviation fuel credits, you obviously get the coasts. That's probably not super surprising. Then you get rural America. That might be more surprising. You get in Nebraska, you get in Arizona, you get in Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, Illinois. Oh yeah, you've also got California, Washington, and Oregon, right? And so it becomes a really interesting equation. I think the more people you can get support it for just differing reasons, the more we're going to have that long-term certainty.
We've had a lot of focus today at Axios House on AI. To what extent are you implementing AI in your business?
Yeah, let me back up. So we talked a little bit about SAF today, and thank you for giving me my moment, because that is our most important lever that we have to pull is sustainable aviation fuel. Again, liquid drop-in, put it in the planes today, 80% less carbon emissions, no brainer on that one. But there's an immense amount of cool stuff happening out there on the technology side. I'll come back to AI, but there's two kind of areas of focus for us this year. So one was, before we just jump to AI, let's look to nature, right? Putting an airplane in the sky is following nature already. So what else is nature doing that we should be looking at? So a couple interesting things. We announced earlier this year our intent to try formation flying across the transatlantic, something that you will likely see live trial potentially later on this year. So geese fly in a V for a reason. Maybe aircraft should think about something, again, always within the bounds of safety. That way, if we can get that drag, the research shows that you could use 5 to 10% less fuel as you go across the transatlantic. Super cool. I'll give you another one. Right now, we're trialing a product called a finlet. just as simple as it sounds, goes on the back of an airplane, potentially 2 to 3% less fuel by throwing on a finlet. We're also looking at a product called Shark Skin. Very same thing, wraps an airplane in something that's got a little very light riblet, can't see it, but you can feel it if you put your hand over it. 1% less fuel efficiency. Those are just the basics. Let's go back to nature before we jump to AI. But there's a ton on AI, right? I'm not an AI expert. You've had a lot of guests here today, but what they're doing will allow me to be able to decarbonize faster. And so I never get that tension of like AI is bad, though I understand there are some challenges with it. So AI for us means, what's a good example? Well, a lot of people here said that they have traveled, right? And so did you eat or drink every item that was in our catering cart on that airplane? You probably did not, right? Can you imagine how much stuff we put in those catering carts? Because we want you to have, if you're a Fanta drinker, Coke Zero, you name it.
Biscoff cookies.
Biscoff cookies. We want to make sure you never run out, and we never will, by the way. But AI allows us now to get those carts off the plane, to look at them with an AI camera, and to now be able to better predict what you're consuming based upon where you're going and the time of day. Which means we're learning things very quickly. Certain times of the day, no one drinks the domestic wine, right? So let's not carry wine through the air. There's a reason if you're in any
I'm sure you'll upset somebody, but...
I will make sure you have wine, by the way. Like, have fun on that vacation. But there's a reason why if you look at any bottling or any beverage company, they're not flying that product through the air for a reason. That is the most expensive way to create a warehouse. And so we're trying to use those cameras there. Very similarly, just little things right now, but just how you gate at the world's busiest airport, Atlanta, our hub. You can basically look at AI and essentially in digital twin concepts and just say we can gate this better. Similarly, turns. I mean, there's just so many, AI sets us free in so many ways.
In our final moments together, Amelia, I want to do a concluding lightning round game of Would You Rather.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Would you rather have one big, bold bet pay off or 10 small bets succeed?
10 small bets. That means you're controlling what you can control.
Would you rather always get the middle seat or always be stuck in the last boarding group?
Middle seat.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Oh, look, everyone's like, ooh, no. What's wrong with her?
Would you rather see the past or change the future?
Audience, help me out with this one. What do you think? Future? All right, love it. We got a bunch of
Look at
optimists here.
That was a group
Thank
answer.
you for the help.
Amelia, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, thank you.
Up next, we have Axios publisher Nick Johnston.
Folks, good afternoon. I'm Nicholas Johnson. I'm the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us here at Axios House. We're again on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly during Climate Week. This is a big week for us. We're very happy and grateful that you all joined us. We're also super grateful to all of our partners. Like, nothing we do at Axios is possible without the support of our partners. The investments we make in journalism around the country, convening great conversations like this. So huge thanks to Suntory Global Spirits for making today's conversation possible, for also stocking the back of the room for after this conversation. Like, I love all of our partners equally, but I really enjoy the conversation with Suntory Global Spirits. So I'm very excited to welcome for a view from the top conversation their Chief Environmental Sustainability Officer and Head of Enterprise Risk Management, Kim Murata. Kim, welcome to Axios House. Hello, welcome. Have a seat.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's start, I think, big picture. Tell us a little bit about the company and why it's important to be here and how you think about some of these sustainability
Absolutely.
issues.
Well, first of all, it's really great to be here. I love this intimate setting, and I love Delta and putting a little maker's mark on our Delta planes, that connection. So about our company, when you think of Suntory, think about some of our iconic brands. Since 1795, so many consumers around the world have been enjoying our spirits. So Jim Beam, or Maker's Mark, or Yamasaki, or Hakushu, Roku, Lafroig, Tres Generación, just to name a few.
It just goes on and on.
It goes
right?
on and on. So almost any place you were able to enjoy some of our great spirits. And for us, when we think about sustainability, It's really core to our business. Just like you heard from the last speaker, we think a sustainable business and a profitable business are just one and the same. You have to have both in order to be successful. In fact, our parent company, Suntory Holdings, often talks about a vision of growing for good. And it's not growing just for shareholders. It's growing for the good of the environment, for the planet, and for the people. So for us, this Climate Week is just really important to us. It's important for us to be here to talk about what sustainability means to us, to have you touch it and feel it and taste it a little bit later and get a chance to learn a little bit more about us.
So a central element of the way we've talked about it before is water conservation. So like a framing we love at Axios is like why it matters. Could you like bring that into why it matters? Why it's important to the business, why it's important to the consumer?
Absolutely, it's super simple. No water, no whiskey.
All right.
So, but I mean, if you really think about it, if you think about the Beam family, or you think about our family from Suntory Holdings, or you think about Lefroy or Bowmore, we really chose the places that our distilleries are located because of the land and because of the water. And so, in Kentucky, where bourbon is really, distilled, it's there because we've got limestone aquifers. And when water goes to the aquifer, it goes through very slowly, and it removes the iron, and it infuses it with calcium and magnesium, giving it wonderful bourbon and whiskey flavors in Kentucky. Same thing in Japan. You've got really fresh, natural waters in the valley where Yamasaki is located, or Lefroy and Bowmore on an island. So you've got the sea and the salt coming off the sea that really helps with the maturation process. So it's all about the water. It's the main ingredient in our products. It flows through every part of the process of distillation, and it's really key that we have good.
It's just a really cool framing about how integral it is. Like, it isn't an academic exercise.
It is
for
not.
you
It's
folks
simple.
at all. Well, so let's zero in on that. Like a huge challenge, sustainability conversations is how do you measure and track it? So how do you measure and track
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So first of all, we start in our own house. So for us, it's about reducing the amount of water that we use within our own operations. And we set a target of 50%, and we exceeded that. So we saved over 5 billion liters of water since 2019. And then we look at it's beyond our own house, so where our distilleries are located, those watersheds are really important to us. So if we're in Mexico and we're making tequila in Tequila, Mexico, we need to make sure we have long-term availability of water. Or if we're in India in Oaksmith and Teachers, or we're in Spain with Larios Gin, those watersheds are at risk. So it's important that we work with other stakeholders within those watersheds, protect that water so that the community can have it for the long term, agriculture can have it for the long term, and we can use it to make our products.
I mean, that touches on a lot of conversations here we've had on the stage today about, like, no one does this alone, the partnerships. How do you think about both working with other folks in the industry, leading the industry? Like, what is the role that you hope Suntory Global Spirit plays in those longer term?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people here are sustainability practitioners, but you can't do it one company alone. You can't do it one farmer alone. You can't do it one community alone. It's all about cooperation, or I mix up the word collaboration because I've heard the term recently, co-opetition. So for us, when we look at our watersheds, so many of our peers and competitors are in those watersheds. So we don't compete against each other. We need to really cooperate with each other. And we have projects in Mexico where we have Pernod Ricard, Brown-Forman, almost every one of our peers and competitors involved in replenishing the water in that watershed for the long term. Or when we look at how we engage in regenerative agriculture, our corn growers are growing corn for our peers and our competitors. So it's silly for us to go in and work with one farmer and put in our specific practices. It's better for us to work together and improve that farmer's livelihood in those
I want to keep that sense of, what was the word that you just made up?
Co-opetition.
I'm not even going to try. Collaboration and cooperation. What I love about doing these events, especially here around the UN General Assembly and Climate Week, is that the folks who show up are the folks who care and can actually make a difference. What would be your advice to them when they go back to their agencies or their companies or their countries to be a force for good?
I think that's a great question. One of the things about Climate Week I think that's the best is hopefully we all leave here really inspired. I was listening behind the scenes. I was listening to what she was talking about. It left me inspired. And I know all of us are walking from one area to the next area and hearing people on every stage. And we're in it together. And we're here because we've got the greatest jobs in the world and the greatest opportunities in the world to make a difference. So I hope everybody...
How do you capture that enthusiasm of days like this and take it home with you?
Absolutely.
Draw the connection, I guess, to the individual brands. Like, you've touched on this a little bit, but how you think about some of these sustainability goals and these conservation goals, how do you tell that story, in each individual brand? How do you make that connection for consumers?
Absolutely. Well,
see
I'll
it.
focus on one brand in particular, but we have a lot of brands that are activating around sustainability. But Maker's Mark is one that we're super proud and super excited about it. It's about putting the purpose behind the brand. So Maker's Mark, you might not know, is a B Corp. It's the only Kentucky distillery to be a B Corp. It's also committed to regenerative agriculture. So that connection between good soil, reducing chemicals and fertilizers and nitrogen, producing better quality, better ingredients to really produce a better product. They actually started, or we started, a regenerative alliance. We have a commitment to take conventional farming, 1 million acres, and turn it into regenerative acres. We'll pay for education and training for farmers and landowners so that everybody can join us on this initiative. And we launched, you'll see it in a second, so I won't preempt that, a new whiskey this year. It's an American wheat whiskey. It's called Star Hill Farms, in tribute to the farm where our distillery is located. And it really is an opportunity to really put purpose into our brands so that consumers can see it firsthand.
Well, I mean, this has been sitting here right here. And I love every Axios newsletter. I like to end on one fun thing. I like to end our events on one fun thing. I really love doing this with Suntory Global Spirits because they bring things to the one fun thing. This is what you were just talking about, where the lived experience through the Maker's Mark brand. Can you tell us a little more?
Absolutely.
About
So this is a really special product that came out just this year, as I mentioned. And we launched it with the launch of our Regenerative Alliance to celebrate our commitment to regenerative agriculture. We've committed, we actually have 100% of our wheat and our corn is already Regenified certified, and we're on the way to actually have all of our barley as well, Regenified certified. That's a third party that will come in. So you will have a chance to
This
taste
is my
this
last
today.
time on stage for the day, so
Mine too.
cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you to Suntory Global Spirits. Kim, thank you for being
Thank you.
here.
Cheers, everybody.
Oh my goodness. And that's available for when we're
That,
done.
as well as our special honey that came right from
All
the
right,
farm.
that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. I'm taking this with me when I leave the stage, but stay tuned. Ben Gaman is keeping the conversation going. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Gieman, Senior Energy Reporter at Axios, and I co-author something I'm really excited about, which is our newly relaunched Future of Energy newsletter, which I now co-write with Amy Harder, who is back at Axios, which is awesome news. And I've got some other awesome news. Right now, I would like to please welcome to our stage our next guest, the World Resources Institute President and CEO, Ani Dasgupta. Thank you for joining us. So, you have a new book, which I recommend to everybody. It is called it is called The New Global Possible: Rebuilding Optimism in the Age of Climate Crisis. And one thing that I thought was interesting about this book is that it's obviously hopeful, quite hopeful, as the title suggests, but it's also by turns pragmatic and also quite candidly blunt in some spots. I want to start on that blunt side for a second. You write, quote, "We have focused on what our goals are while overlooking how to achieve them, how to orchestrate necessary change. This is our profound collective failure." Please say more, and how do you sort of reverse that failure?
Hi, everyone. It's hard to come after whiskey, especially at the end of the day. So 4.5 years back, I became CEO of WRI, and one thing I asked myself is, what is WRI's purpose and what is my purpose? In this process, I ended up talking to 100 people who've been in climate. The main question I was asking, where are we in this climate movement? Where are we going? Mm-hmm. If you can remember, 4 years back, as it's now, people were kind of disappointed where we are, and we should be disappointed where we are. And in this journey, in this discussion with 100 people, I actually walked away optimistic from those conversations, and that quote, the sentence you just read out, is from that discussion. I felt, and the reason I'm optimistic, and I repeat, I think we should be disappointed where we are. I'm optimistic about the future for 3 reasons. One is, I think we are in the beginning of this transition, not in the middle or end of it. The beginning of the transition for a economy that is, cleaner, produces cleaner energy, good for nature, good for people. And actually, we are seeing, which we didn't even in Paris 10 years back, technologies that are available to us for this transition at a scale and speed and price that we didn't even think possible 3. All of you have heard about solar and wind, what price they are. Even batteries, they're 10 times cheaper. Actually, there's a new announcement how it will be even 10 times cheaper from that. But even things we thought was very hard to do, cement, steel, glass, all these technologies are coming out. So the market is producing technology for this transition, but it is not happening everywhere, right? We're not transitioning. So what I write in this is that what we are failing to do is actually technology itself doesn't produce good outcome. We need to orchestrate that outcome. We need to bring, when there's a technology for finance, the regulators, the users, the people who will build the technology. And what we are failing to do is, over and over again, this orchestration is failing.
Yeah.
So we have focused too long from these very silver bullet solution. We have said till 2003, when solar and wind became commercially viable, that if we get the price right of solar and wind, everything will be fine. We would have sorted this out. Price is right actually today for solar and wind. Solar and wind is the cheapest form of energy for 95% of countries in the world. But have you seen the energy revolution that we expect? It's only 20% of energy supply in the world. 80% of energy today is fossil fuel. So price itself doesn't do it, because somewhere is the policy, somewhere. So what I'm arguing is we need to focus on how to get things done, not just what to do.
Yeah.
Not how many goals we have. And actually, when we have done that, Ben, and when we have actually done things that are good for people, the outcome is good for people, across the world, there's 60, 70 examples in this book.
Absolutely.
We have done that.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. One of the really cool things about this book is that it's pretty specific in a lot of spots. It goes from sort of coarse to fine. And I would like to ask for the audience, what are some examples of specific policies, either at the corporate or regional or national governmental level, that you feel are especially replicable and scalable in other areas or to other companies?
If I may share 2 examples from 2, there are a lot of examples in this. And the reason I put this together is simply because there are examples in the world we should learn about. The good things are happening in the world and actually beneficial. So one of my favorite stories, I'll tell you 2 stories too, is that I met, while I was writing this book, 3 women just outside Nairobi who run a macadamia nut factory. And what they do is they actually work with 10,000 farmers. We help them grow macadamia trees. When the trees go sick, they provide the technical assistance. The best thing they do is when the fruit there, they buy it and immediately through their phone pay those farmers. So 10,000 farmers are getting income from it, 50,000 people. But then they bring this nuts to just outskirts of Nairobi. They have a small factory. They employ a lot of people, mostly women. They process it and sell it in Europe and the United States, actually. But in this story, not only these people, the people I just mentioned, getting employment, but these trees live for 50 years. They are sequestering carbon, and those roots under those trees are bringing back water. You just heard the story of water just now from Suntory. And Africa, where this story is from, has more than 50% of the land that is degraded. That's not arable, meaning you can't grow something or have. So for Africa, where 55% of people are actually connected to land, getting land back to working through a process of economic change. It's not some, and the best part of the story is these 3 women actually got a small loan from a project we're involved in. But now they don't need any loan. They are commercially viable. So if we can create this unit of change over and over again, that is not only good for people now, but it's actually good for nature and climate in the long term, that is, I think, secret. If I have time for another quick story, which is a completely different scale, we all have mattresses, I hope we do, that we sleep on. Mattress is a very bulky thing when you don't use it anymore, to dispose of, and landfills or incinerator full of mattresses. And so in Netherlands, IKEA said we will buy back mattresses. And most countries don't have actually have policies against reuse of mattresses because of disease. So the policy in Netherlands say you can't buy back mattresses. But then they worked with IKEA to change the policy, and the IKEA started buying these mattresses, and they said we will buy anyone's mattress, not just IKEA's mattress. And they found that those recycled mattress material are cheaper than virgin mattress material. So here is a cycle with when government and policy are working together to find an outcome where their landfills are not getting filled up, they're not killing plants to get more raw material, and they're making money through this process. So these are the kind of ways, and there are many stories like this, that they're not enough in scale, but we actually see the beginning of what good could look like.
Yeah, the book has many stories that I think are really useful, which leads me to want to ask you about something else in your book that zooms way out, which is you say, quote, you're right, quote, it is time to talk less about 2030, 2050, and 2100, and instead focus on how political decisions today can practically improve the quality of people's lives. What else does that mean in practice, in addition to the examples you've just given us?
So in my work and in my experience of doing this, and this won't surprise any of you, what I found is, when we are doing climate as if it's a numerical game, that how many megawatts, how many gigatons on air, what we need to reduce, it's all about these numbers. Day after tomorrow, actually tomorrow, Tuesday, UN will have this meeting when we'll make this NDC announcements, which are all about these macro numbers, which are all important. I work in an organization that does this for a living. But where we are failing very much is actually implementing climate policies that are good for people today. And that's often hard to do because a lot of climate things are long term. But when we fail to actually bring people with us, we are actually failing to bring the political process that needs to happen to support these policies. So they're not durable. So we do one thing, and then people don't benefit, someone else comes, and this country is a poster child of that example. But it's not only this country, that they're not durable solutions. So what I mean by that is that we have to find solutions that are actually good for people today. And if they're not, it is very difficult for them to stick. And that is where I think politically we're failing, we meaning all of us who work in this, to convert this numerical game of technical discussion. You can't have an economic transition that we are beginning of without a political process that supports it.
And one of the sets of institutions, certainly not the only levers for change, but one of them that you write at some length about are different multilateral institutions, including the UN climate process. And forgive me if this is an inaccurate summary, but I would say that your view of some of these institutions is something of a mend it but don't end it approach. That said, I would say that the current White House has an approach that I would just see as end it, right? And so I guess what I'm wondering is, do you see that posture from one of the dominant political parties in the U.S. outlasting these next 3.5 years? And if so, how do you grapple with that?
I mean, I feel that climate or any outcome that it doesn't have national boundaries, climate is not the only topic, actually. Mm-hmm. You have to have a process where companies so what happens in the United States is actually our lives here, how much air we breathe, water is dependent on what everyone else in the world is doing. So you can sign yourself out, doesn't mean your people or economy will be protected from it. Mm-hmm. So by walking out of it, I've written about it, you're just giving other people the right to do whatever they want to do in the world. I think there's a lot been written about how the UN COP process is not perfect or not good because it hasn't solved the climate problem yet. They have had 30 of them. But it is, the climate problem is we have an economy that is 200 years old of hydrocarbons. That's the economy we have. And these 200 years has been the most successful 200 years for humans, for how many people have gotten out of poverty, how many people have been prosperous, not equally distributed. I come from India, so I'm very familiar with it's not distributed. but it has been the most prosperous, which means hydrocarbon or fossil fuel is in everything in our economy. Not just in transportation, not just in energy. If you shampoo this morning, that plastic bottle was made out of some oil product. So for us to get out of that, we are just the beginning of the process. We can't just, these people who have been very successful, I'm just going to pack up and leave. We have to work with them to change the economy. So I think we should all be disappointed at how far we have come. I don't think we should be surprised that we find opposition of the incumbents at this moment. I mean, that should not surprise us. So I think we need to figure out how to work together to actually get to an outcome we want. And I think we need to speed it up. But if we did not have COP, we didn't have COP, we said COP is terrible, we will invent something exactly like COP to solve these problems. Yeah. And I just want to point out, COP has many flaws, and I write in the book all the flaws about it. But COP has one thing that is incredibly unique for the climate. It has voice for every country. And that has proven over and over again how important that is. That is also terrible because one country can stop things happening. But for vulnerable countries and poorer countries, there is no other forum in the world where there is voice. This is why, in spite of Belém being terrible and how you can't get housing, you will see so many people in Belém. Because voice is important, I think a lot more things needs to happen to COP to make it better. Accountability will be one thing. I think we should have decision making that is not unanimous. We could have a voice, but not a veto. Other things like that. But if we don't have a forum for countries to come together, you will invent one, Ben.
Definitely. And in fact, we have some breaking news this afternoon, which is that Simon Steele, the head of the UN climate arm, in fact, formally said he is soliciting feedback on COP reforms. And in this book, you'll actually get a lot of ideas for that. I want to end on one last quick question. There's a lot happening this week here in New York. What is one thing that we are going to hear probably too much about, and what's one thing that we probably are not going to hear enough about and you would like to inject even further into the conversation?
So one good news about this week that I already heard is that I and many people who work in this field were very worried no one will show up given all the terrible immigration policies of this country. But actually, this year actually it's a bigger climate week than it was last year, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? We should feel that all of us are here because we care about this thing and it's important. I feel there'll be too many discussion about long-term goals and commitments, which are important. I think we need to do things today and tomorrow and day after and be accountable for it. So I hope there's a lot more discussion about what we are doing now, what we're going to do tomorrow, and how do we hold each other accountable for that, so that we make progress and people who are not here in this room see that what we're saying makes a difference to their lives, so that this doesn't remain a discussion of the technical people interested in climate. It becomes a discussion for all of us who live in this world who are suffering. There was $500 million of loss of climate change just last year. I mean, not $500 million, $500 billion of loss just last year.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Ani, thank you so much for joining us at Axios.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, thank you. Now we are going to go over to my colleague Chuck McCutcheon for our final conversation of the afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, I'm Chuck McCutcheon, Axios' climate and energy editor, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our final event of the day here. I'm excited to close things out with a very special guest. You're going to learn that with circularity in auto racing, it doesn't just mean that what the wheels on the cars do. Please welcome to our stage McLaren Racing's Director of Sustainability, Kim Wilson. So let me just start out by asking, what drew you to work for McLaren? Were you a Formula One fan?
maybe. I watched a lot of Drive to Survive for my interview. No, I mean, why wouldn't you want to work for McLaren? What an amazing organisation to work for. And for me, you know, what an opportunity to be the first ever director of sustainability for a Formula One team and in our sport. So being innovative and pioneering in that space, being able to set up my own team and set a brand new strategy. It's a career forming opportunity, so I couldn't say no.
Great. Well, listen, you've said Formula One, it's a global sport that's based on constant innovation and development, and that a lot of the innovations in motorsports have really gone beyond the sport. I mean, why is that? What is it about Formula One that lends itself so well to innovation?
So, you know, we are an organisation that designs and manufactures 2 cars across a season, across a year. Yet we reiterate and are constantly developing new parts and new designs every year. So we're making thousands of cars in the space of 1 year, and that's exciting for sustainability, where we want to learn from that attitude and that approach of iterating, learning, leading into technology, finding solutions, learning from your failures, failing fast and starting again. And I think in sustainability we often are sort of focused on perfection, and we need to stop doing that and just keep going and trying and learning. If it doesn't work, trying again. And Formula One's brilliant at that. The other thing we're really good at is focusing on what's our absolute primary goal. So in the context of Formula One, it's how do we reduce lap time? We apply that to sustainability with really clear KPIs of what we're trying to achieve, what's going to make the biggest difference, and then going after that and being very data driven and doing that in a way that the data is informing the right decisions rather than just data for data's sake. So I think there's a lot of parallels in learning. The other thing about working in Formula One is I think we have the most incredible platform to use our voice to talk about the things that we're doing, the things that we can influence in terms of change, educating. We've got an incredible platform in terms of our fan base, being able to get the message out and help people understand why we're doing and that these can be positive changes for people's lives. And then we have an amazing partner ecosystem at McLaren, and you can't achieve these things on your own. So collaboration is really fundamental as well.
Great. Well, I know McLaren has really tried to be an innovator in the material space, being the first to use carbon fiber and pioneering recycled carbon fiber on your cars. For those of us who don't know the first thing about racing, why is carbon fiber so important? I understand that there's a potential 90% reduction in carbon emissions compared to virgin carbon fiber?
Yeah, so at McLaren Racing, we have set ourselves the target of following best practice standards in sustainability. We're the only team to have committed to net zero by 2040 and halve our emissions by 2030 and have that validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative. So we're not marking our own homework, we're holding ourselves up to accepted standards. And when we looked at our data and our carbon footprint, we found that materials were a very significant part of our impact. So that then led us to look at, well, carbon fiber is great for on-track performance. It's light and it's super strong, but it has a big carbon footprint. So then we started to look at, well, what if it was recycled? And we found a supplier who's taking the waste from the aerospace industry.
Really?
And then recycling it. So we decided to try and see what would happen. So we tried it on the car in Austin on a non-safety critical part, I would add. And then we tried it again on a different part at Silverstone last year. And now we're looking at, well, what next? And the thing about new materials is you have to think about how do we not compromise between on-track performance, and especially at the time now for McLaren when we're doing well. We never want to compromise that for sustainability, but we also need to find ways to balance that and innovate.
Okay, yeah. I know McLaren really wants to accelerate, no pun intended, the transition to a circular economy and develop a circular Formula One car in collaboration with Deloitte. I mean, can you talk about this collaboration, how it came about, and what was it about that attracted you to Deloitte? And can you also talk about the way in which you're trying to measure circulating with them?
Yeah, so when we looked at our impacts, we looked at where the opportunities were to drive positive change, and part of our culture is being pioneering and brave and innovating. We saw an opportunity to let's create ourselves a moonshot of a fully circular Formula One car. We had no idea how we were going to do that, and we still don't quite.
Right.
But then we also realised we don't know how to measure this, and there's no equivalent of the greenhouse gas protocol out there for, at the moment, I know there's something under development for how we're going to measure this. So Deloitte's an amazing partner of ours, and we're always looking for collaboration opportunities in that space, and they've got a great circularity team. So we looked at, okay, well, if there isn't a standard out there, let's create one. And so we worked with them to look at how we're going to measure circularity, because what gets measured gets managed. And so we've developed a handbook that can be used by any constructor within Formula One to measure all the materials that they use coming into their factory to manufacture a Formula One car across the season, and then what's wasted at the end, and you come up with a percentage of how circular your process for manufacturing a Formula One car is. And I think what people don't quite realise is what you see on track is less than 1% in the context of materials for all the materials we're using. Because we're constantly iterating and making models, and we even make our own tools, and we make our own bolts and screws and everything. So there's a huge amount of materials that we're using. And that's so important for us to think about how can we reduce that. It's good for business to not be wasteful. It's good for the environment in terms of resource scarcity, and it's good in terms of that whole sense of how can we be less reliant on external insecurity around our supply chains if we can get the maximum value out of the materials that we're using.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of partnerships, I know you also have a partnership with Ecolab. Can you sort of talk about that in terms of investing in sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, and the other endeavors?
Yeah, so we've looked at our total carbon footprint and realised that actually almost 25% of our emissions comes from aviation. That's both moving people and cars and garage material around the world to be able to deliver a season of racing. So we've been working with Ecolab to look at, okay, well, what are the opportunities to do that? And they're in a partnership with the Minnesota SAF Hub, where they're looking to invest and build an economy around sustainable aviation fuel. So we've, together with Ecolab, have invested in over 1 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel, and that is compensating through insetting of all of our business travel emissions, and we'll continue to invest in that going forward in our logistics as well as our business travel.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I was reading your annual report, and you talked in there about how you really expanded your climate program. You've worked with the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, supporting UNDO's enhanced rock weathering for carbon removal, and partnering with Momback to restore degraded areas of the Amazon rainforest. So obviously you've got a lot on your plate. Can you sort of briefly talk about all those?
Absolutely. So as part of our climate action program, part of what we wanted to do was not just look at how can we reduce our operational and supply chain footprint, but what else can we do to address climate change in the wider context. And we know that there are damaged ecosystems out there that need restoration. And we also know there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and reducing is not enough. We have to also find a way to remove it and store it. So that's what that program is about. And Undo and Momback are about the carbon removal side of the program. But the Great Barrier Reef Foundation is just a really exciting and a bit of a passion project for me as well, because it came to us as a project that one of our engineers was, our supply chain team was watching a television program and saw that there was this coral reef restoration project on TV, and he said to me, "You've got to go and have a conversation with them." And so I did. And at McLaren, we have a team of in-house experts who take F1 engineering and know-how and our culture and high-performance mindset, and they help other industries, particularly within our partner ecosystem, apply that mindset, learning and approach to their businesses to drive positive change. And so we've done that with the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. And they have an amazing team of marine engineers who are working to restore the coral reef and using that as a sort of test bed for what you can do with coral reef restoration around the world. And we went in and looked at their process and said, look, if you took an F1 lens to it, we could enhance it by accelerating and scaling what you can do and reduce the cost of doing that. So we've done a whole sort of engineering analysis of their process, found opportunities to optimize that, and now we're helping them automate their coral reef assembly, their baby coral assembly, and plant that onto the reef so that you can scale it for hundreds of thousands to millions across the world.
Fantastic. Yeah, we have about 30 seconds left, so I just wanted to, at Axios, we have a tradition when a new employee starts, they always have to tell one fun fact about yourself. I understand you have a pretty good fun fact.
Yeah, so a lot of people hearing me and looking at me might not realize I'm half Singaporean. For me, that is something that's very obviously dear to my heritage and my heart, but also relating back to what I do, Singapore is at the forefront of technology and innovation as well. And they are doing some really exciting work around new technology to help with climate challenges and resource efficiency. And so I watch that with love and interest from afar.
Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Kim, thanks so much for joining us at Axios House. And thanks again to all of you for joining us. We have plenty of conversations happening tomorrow, including Amazon CSO Kara Hurst, Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who's always had a thing or two to say about climate change, climate investor Tom Steyer, and many, many more. And before you go, be sure to check out Suntory's honey and whiskey activations throughout Axios House this evening. So stick around, and hope to see you back here tomorrow, and have a great night.